Zookeepers of Reddit, how are the animals acting differently now that there are no visitors to the zoo? Due to temporary staff cuts, they no longer have the people to regularly walk the wombats. Some of the wombats are holding the keepers personally responsible. Imagine having a 20 kilogram chunk of muscle with big rodent teeth mad at you. Can confirm. I'm not happy with the current situation. In our local zoo, the apes started to miss the visitors, so they brought in an artist in who's now just painting in the empty monkey house, so the apes had someone to watch. Edit. Whoa, this blew up overnight. Europe. They could tell they missed the visitors because they became very bored and are much more excited about the keepers than usual. Apparently they watch the visitors as much as the other way around. The keepers now have to pay them more attention to, and they also do stuff like hide food for them as a game also. Sorry for the confusion. I'm not as a keeper myself, but I live close by the zoo, and it was in the local news and such. They need a TV in Sesame Street. Most of our animals are happy as long as we can keep their routines, feeding times, etc. For some they need a little extra. We do public encounters with our koalas, wombats, and snakes among others, so we spend an hour or so a day cuddling and handling these animals to keep them happy. A few of our koalas really fret if they don't get their cuddles. Otherwise we just try to continue to spend time with animals that are expecting human interaction, and of course we can take things for walks around the place, like I'm sure you've seen at other zoos. Our wombats love a run and sniff, dingoes as well. Your job is to cuddle koalas, and I'm stuck in home all alone. For a lot of our animals, having the ability to interact with guests is actually extremely important. Even for primates to be able to play with kids through the glass, they are missing out on a lot of enrichment. Guests keep a lot of the monkeys entertained. I watch our guests all day long show our marmosets and capuchin selfie cameras, and they love to see their reflection. Guests will also show videos on their phones to animals, and the monkeys totally enjoy it. We have a rescue cockatoo named Ro who sings row 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 your boat to guests. When little kids dance and sing it to her, she gets really excited and feeds off their energy. So do our other cockatoos on exhibit. But now without guests to show off for, every now and then, when it's quiet we'll hear her start row row row, and then she stop and huffs a bit and gets really quiet and sad because she has no one to sing to. Some of our animals really miss having kids to show off for. You also have to remember that animals in zoos for the most part have grown up totally accustomed to being around people 24/7. They are not wild animals at all really. They've grown up in a very different social dynamic. Quite a few animals get noticeably depressed in the winter months every year when we have few guests, and then perk up in the spring when we get busy. My girlfriend is a zookeeper and animal behaviorist. She says their animals are becoming stressed. One of their African grey bads has been plucking his own feathers. She also mentioned that because they can't touch many of the animals due to the virus potentially spreading to another zookeeper, many of the animals are looking and acting depressive, not eating well, etc. That's it everyone. You're making the bird sad. Y'all are in timeout. I'm an aquarium keeper, and I've certainly noticed a change. Fish are not as stressed as they used to be, as there are no longer children stomping around and banging on glass screaming, "Nemo, Nemo, it's Nemo," at every clone fish. We brought some of our younger penguins down to let them watch the fish, and they were intrigued but confused as to why they couldn't catch them through the glass. Our octopus has become much more friendly as well, and instead of hiding all day from people, enjoys playing with small baby toys or solving food puzzles. It's been nice. I wish there were guidelines people had to sign to behave at zoos before entering, but at the same time, they are the lifeline we so desperately need to keep functioning. Edit. This post has gotten more love than any other post I have ever made, so I'm going to capitalize on it. Now more than ever, zoos and zoo animals need your help. I understand that it is a time of financial disparity for a lot of people, myself included, but we as humans will be fine and overcome this. Those who cannot are the species we help to conserve it as are accredited facilities. Without people having interest in wildlife, zoos themselves could now face extinction. If you have a local zoo, or a zoo you just adore, please donate. Something as small as a pizza for the keepers of your favorite animals, or a donation the price of general admittance, all the way up to buying a membership, or making a significant donation, goes so far to help us stay employed and caring for all our individuals. We are doing our best during this crisis to bring you the best experience we can, so you can social distance too. If you like what you see and have the ability, you can be sure that your donation is appreciated by every single keeper working through this time. Fellow octopus keeper here. Without the crowd scaring her into her cave, our GPO has gotten straight up feisty. She's so active, I've encouraged our parrot keepers to go past her when taking the birds on walks, just for a little extra visual stimulation. She's got quite the love affair with one of the cockatoos. I'm late to the thread, so I'm sure this will get buried, but I work for a very large, very busy as a zoo. I work with the ambassador animals, so they are animals that are very used to the public. Pretty much like what everyone else has said, the animals are mostly confused that there aren't any people. Our petting zoo animals in particular are super needy. The second they see or hear us, they all come running over and start crying for attention. We are trying to give all the animals as much attention as possible, but we are down to a bare bones crew, so it's not as much as we would like. What I wanted to add, though, because I think it's incredibly interesting, is that we are collecting fecal samples from some of the animals to be tested for cortisol levels, which is a pretty good indicator of stress levels. That way, when guests come back, we can take samples for comparison to see how much guests impact stress. I think it's really cool that we are taking this opportunity to see what we can learn about how guests impact the animals, and to see if there are potentially things we can do even better to improve the lives of the animals in our care. We were really hoping to do some behavioral studies too about things like activity levels, amount of the enclosure being utilized, etc. that are also important considerations for their welfare, but unfortunately we just don't have the time or staffing. This is super cool. It's awesome that you're making the best of this situation to learn more. I'm super fascinated with this idea. My wife works at the gift shop for our zoo, and the other day we had to go move some stuff around in the store because due to some heavy rains, it had flooded a bit. Of course we took a lap around the empty park, other than the keepers and few maintenance workers, and found that all the animals were really active and playful. A lot of them seemed really curious about us too. I'm sure they get used to seeing crowds every day and were starving for attention. I've been in a zoo early when no one else was around, and the animals were all super active and engaging. As a keeper coordinator, I've been working at the now closed zoo almost every day for the past month. Animals that are free roaming, peacocks, iguanas, are more active and follow keepers around like they usually do with visitors. Most of the others don't show much change in behavior, although birds like swans and flamingos are using the edges of their habitats more. True, I haven't found much change in pets or those animals that are being well taken care of. I have noticed that this has mostly affected stray animals whose only source of food was by eating all they found on the streets/parks. Since nobody is around, they don't get food. I do my best by feeding like 10 to 12 stray dogs who come to eat at our farm. It makes my day watching them eat. Edit. Thanks for the suggestion to get them neutered. I'll pass the suggestion to my parents. I take care of fish, but mostly jellyfish. The jellies don't give a single fuck. It's been nice for me though, because I can turn most of their display lights off so less algae grows, and I have to do less scrubbing. My actual fish don't care. The beluga whales were screeching at the cleaning crew the other day, which was hilarious. I don't work with the whales, but it seems like they enjoy, or are at least interested in, seeing others around. Actually, you can check the live cam video feed and see for yourselves. San Diego Zoo live cams. Amazing. I just watched an ape on the other side of the world pick its nose, live. It made my evening. The 2 pygmy hippos, 6 bison, giant anteater, and lowland tapir I took care of. I'm temporarily laid off. Didn't have any change in behavior. So catus are still assholes. I work on an activity farm. There is a 22-year-old Shire horse. He acts like a dick when there are customers around. With no customers, he's actually still a dick. That being said, he's still awesome. Edit. I've been asked what he does when there are customers. Basically, if he sees any customer feeding any other animal in the large barn, where he hangs out in the day, he will stare at them and stomp his front hoof on the ground. That guarantees they look at him. If they don't immediately come over to feed him, he will start kicking the heavy metal bars that divide his area and the pen next door. This makes one hell of a noise, and he will keep it up, all whilst staring at the person with the food. If they feed him, then he rewards them by slobbering all over their hands as he takes the food. Also, at the end of the day, he is really good at telling the time. He knows when we close and what time he should be released from the barn and taken to the field/stables, where he spends the night. If he isn't let out bang on time, he starts kicking the shit out of the gate at the back of his pen. This is a big metal gate, and it sounds like someone playing a giant glockenspiel with a sledgehammer. He will keep this up until it is opened. Some customers are just scared to hand feed him. He is massive and his mouth is big enough to easily fit someone's hand in. Some customers come up to me with their bag of food and ask me if I will feed him, because he keeps staring at me, but I'm a bit too nervous to feed him. I happily oblige. I love that ornery old bastard. There was a horse at the stables where my daughter used to ride. He would pretend like he needed to pee just to get out of having to make it go around the ring. The teacher would start counting, and he would either start moving or pee. Lol. He was hilarious. Eater. Wow. I'm amazed by the upvotes. I think my most upvoted comment before this was like 250 people. Thanks. Not as a keeper, but I hear the lions out more from my house now. Weirdly reassuring to wake up to and realize the world is still going on. Horse trainer/barn manager here. My farm has 46 horses. About half are privately owned and boarded with us. Like most farms across the country, we are completely shut down to all but essential staff. The horses are mostly pretty happy to eat, hang out, and do horse things. We keep our horses turned out 24/7, which helps them remain healthy, happy, moving, and socializing. They are starting to lose muscling at this point, with being worked/ridden. Months or years of conditioning just disappearing by the day. But it will come back once they are all in work again. But I can tell that they are missing human interaction. My personal riding horse was giving me the cold shoulder yesterday, probably because of the lack of attention. I have been trying to give the boarded horses extra attention. I'm sure their owners are missing them terribly right now. They all seem to lean in a little more when I brush them these days. This fascinates me. My family had horses for a while when I was young. They definitely all have their own personalities. Finally, a thread I can answer. Not a whole lot of change, but animals definitely missing out some enrichment of seeing guests, especially the otters that follow the kids in the glass underwater. Takin, maned wolves, bison, gibbons, bopies, lions, etc. all are about the same. Some of our animals that are skittish have been standing closer to the fence, where guests usually are. Zebras, gazelle, which is nice. It's kinda this weird balance of being both more and less stressed. On the one side, I don't have to worry about keeper talks or BTS tours, and I have more time to get everything done and spend more time with animals. On the other side, we are skeleton crewed, and there's less of us to care for the whole zoo. So I'm working a lot more in areas I don't usually cover as often. There's one kangaroo that still tries to box me, while the emu is shifting. The one peacock still really doesn't like taking his medications, of course. I have noticed that the crows in the city are behaving a bit differently as well, and are being a lot braver. Lol. I've taken to feeding the birds since this whole thing started, and the crows used to be pretty okay with the seagulls barreling in and talking food cause there was always more than enough. Now I see crows scouting and scooping up multiple pieces of food at a time to bring wherever they are hiding the flock, risking getting snapped at by rabid seagulls. I would only rarely see crows take the food away, and it was always after they'd eaten plenty. Now 9/10 times they are squirreling it away. There's a bit of a balance of different behaviors that is kinda interesting. With no visitors, there is more time for enrichment, to get more creative with said enrichment, trialing new things, and exposure to enrichment that has to be supervised, which the animals are loving. Then there are certain animals that do seem to miss having public around. Our younger, 5 years old, African penguins are really seeming to miss being able to swim at the glass and interact with people. higher intelligent animals we have had to come up with new interactions. Lots of new training going on because they are missing the variety and variability of interactions with the public. The snakes don't give a fuck though. I'm just tryna see the penguins walk around the zoo in person, man. That's all I want. You can meet the penguins at the zoo where I used to work. It's just outside Chicago, if you happen to find yourself there after this quarantine. They get to choose whether or not to interact with you, of course, but they will generally choose to because you have fish, which is their favorite quality in a person. Edit. It's at Brookfield Zoo. I'm not sure how much it costs, but I think around $40. I've been told that morning encounters have less kids and more opportunities for adults to attract penguin attention without being rude. The majority of our display birds could care less. However, our birds that do flights outside or routinely meet guests and do more interactive behaviors with the public have definitely noticed, and they are not cool with there being no guests around. Of course, I can only guess, and while this is a bit anthropomorphic, I don't think they understand the change and seem somewhat hesitant to enter a new environment to them as we try to maintain their behavioral skills. One of the macaws, who is also excited to fly, is now always looking around. Pretty sure she expects 450 to 100 people to be watching her. I have a friend with a parrot, and I'm convinced that little bossy fuckaloo's having an audience. He is a complete attention whore. If he regularly had a huge audience, he'd miss it if it suddenly disappeared. Probably. I work at a very well-known and heavily visited zoo. I work with ambassador animals, and it's nice to get a chance to take animals to areas of the zoo they wouldn't normally get a chance to go to because of traffic, etc. But the free-ranging geese, man, they are getting mean and territorial. Literal bridge trolls. They might have the hardest time adjusting when all the people come back and they can't control every pathway. Typical geese behavior from the 3 at my local park that had to be locked in a pen because when free they choose a path and attacked everything coming on their turf, up to cars, not to mention kids, dogs and more. Not as a keeper here, but there was a story on the local news that the apes at the local zoo are apparently very bored because they don't have any people doing stupid things to watch anymore. I guess we are the zoo. I've been watching the Charangos zoo cams, and the seals definitely keep trying to look through the glass for people, while the tigers will pace for 40 minutes straight in front of the viewing window.